granted, Bruges are a good side, but there's so much work for Rangers to do.
Aye.
And that first half performance just underlined that. They did look a bit better after the break. As I said, I thought Diamondi, looked really sharp, really bright when he came on. But I think you have to factor into that the fact that Bruges made 6, 7 changes, however many changes they made. So they were weakened. Look, I'm not surprised, Dan, that that was an up and down performance. And I reiterate, it's going to take them some time. They're going to have to learn how Russell Martin wants his team to play. And I thought that was really interesting. The most interesting bit of all was when Russell Martin said that they kind of went into their shell when they got a bit of a setback, because that is last season's Rangers all over the back.
Yeah.
As soon as it got difficult for them, as soon as they started to hear the groans and the moans around them, they just went so far into their shells. It was incredible. And that was a source of great frustration for Barry Ferguson when he, picked up the pieces after Philippe Clement. And it points to a weakness, a real weakness. And I've seen Billy Dodds talking about that sort of mental
fragility.
Fragility. It's almost like a mental block. It's at the first sign of trouble. There's so many of these players that don't stand up to the challenge. And what Russell Martin needs is to surround himself with players that, if it does start to look a bit, things are getting a bit sticky, they get the sleeves rolled up and they get wired into it. And I think that, I've mentioned previously, I can see what he's doing. There's a structure to the recruitment drive that's currently ongoing. It's British players. And I think they've gone too far away from that. I think you need a British core, whether it's Scottish or British. You need a group of guys who understand what it is that they're involved in and what's required in order to get themselves out of a situation. To me, there's been, just too much of a scattergun approach to the way Rangers have done the recruitment over the previous summers, and it's like one emergency rebuild after the next. But there's a kind of logic and a structure to what Russell Martin is trying to put in place this summer, and Rangers will benefit from it. But it isn't going to happen overnight, and I think it's going to be, it'll almost be miraculous if Russell Martin has this team, the way that he wants it to look for the start of the season. It'll be close to miraculous, because there's so much work that needed done in advance of the summer. And now, as he mentioned there in the press conference as well, Dan, that his squad is now bloated because he's got all these guys, and you saw them with your own eyes today. Robin Proper, he's as well just getting a taxi to the airport and just hiding out in Holland for a while until that deal goes through. Leon King had a really difficult afternoon, which is a shame for him. But I don't see him playing a long-term part. You're looking at Rangers trying to... They brought in the big boy Fernandes, who looked quite good when he came on. He's a specimen. So they've got him. And he's, I think, almost in between project player and first-team ready. He's a guy that they'll want to progress themselves, nurture. But I think you're looking at two centre-halves. I think what he's talking about Connor Cody, the big boy from Wolves, you would expect that, because we were told that was pretty close. So there's two centre-halves that you would expect next week. But by the sounds of it, I think Scott's absolutely right. By the sounds of what Russell Martin's saying there, two players won't make the squad look really different. So I think it could be a real busy week for Rangers. And it has to be, because they're in such a difficult situation. But the other key part of that is getting players out the door.
Yeah.
Because there's guys there that showed again today, they're just not going to contribute.
Time is getting away from us, but just very finally on Rangers, Keith, Andrew in the comments there saying that Dessers, he wants 7 or 8 million from him. Do you think he'll stay, given Russell Martin's comments there?
Well, what I would say is, see what he's saying about Dessers' personality, in terms of he doesn't cause any problems, he's a real professional, and I think he's a bit of a leader around the place. So clearly Rangers, and I think we were, the kind of consensus was that AEK were in about the £4.5 to £5 million mark. And if Rangers are deciding that that's not enough, then maybe they are looking for 7 or 8. And given the size of his contribution in terms of goal scoring, I can understand that. Also, given the fact that Danilo is right now leading that line, or was today, that tells you, that Dessers, even if he's not a regular starter or the first pick as a number 9 next season, I think he's got a contribution. So Rangers need to balance that. If they get a fee that they like the look of, and maybe that is up 6, 7, 8, who knows? Who knows? They've obviously made their own mind up. But it seems that AEK must have been further away from the Rangers valuation than we suspected. Otherwise, I think they would have been able to do a compromise and make a deal happen. And maybe AEK are keeping their powder dry and intend to come back in. But it's been quite a time lapse now between that bid being offered, being rejected, and where we are just now. And Russell Martin, certainly, he wasn't talking him down in any way, shape, or form there. I don't think Russell Martin would be terribly upset if Rangers decided, do you know what, the money on offer's not enough, and he stays.